So one of the biggest things that I find myself wondering to myself out loud, scratching my head about is, with all the mental health progress that we've made, where's everybody's resilience? Resilience is so important. It seems like it's on the decline. Today's podcast, we're going to talk about what resilience is, how resilience can be super powerful, and how we can build up our resilience and the resilience of the people that we care about. My name is Daniel Ifra, LCSW. Welcome to my Sainstorming show, where we sainstorm ways, not brainstorm, but sainstorm ways to keep each other sane in a complex world. Today, I want to talk about resilience. Resilience in the mental health context is the ability to go through a challenge, go through a difficulty, and bounce back. The ability to go through a challenge and difficulty and be less affected, recover quickly. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about resilience. And resilience is something that we need to talk about, even though it's going to be a hot button topic. And there's some reasons why we need to talk about it, because resilience is the human process's natural way of warding off difficulty, warding off damages, warding off, protecting oneself, insulating oneself from challenges, from the impact of situations or circumstances that we can't necessarily control. We can't always control the circumstance. We can't control what happens to us. But when we're resilient and we have that resilience, we have that thicker skin. So what happens is we can actually go through it and become less impacted and have less adverse effects from it. So when we talk about resilience, it's a quality that has been the saving grace for humans for so many generations. And what's interesting to me is that even though we have come so far in the mental health field, in our awareness, in our ability to treat mental health, in our ability to diagnose certain processes and disorders. But with all that progress that we've done, and with all the understanding and education that we've done, we seem to be losing our resilience. What we can go through, what we could have gone through, the same circumstance that a person could have gone through 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and been impacted perhaps this much. Today, they can go through that same situation and be so much more vulnerable and require so much more therapy and so much more intervention. And it kind of makes us wonder, what happened to resilience? Number one, resilience is very valuable. Why is it so valuable? Number two, resilience seems to be on the decrease, on the decline. Why is that? And number three, if resilience is so valuable and so important, what can we do to get that level of resilience, to bring it up, to bring it back so that we are stronger and we can withstand and weather the storm of all the things that happen in our world? In order to be able to address some of these things about resilience, I want to go back. About from a little bit of history from the World War II to today. What researchers showed us is that basically every generation since World War II has had a significant decline in the mental the mental health of individuals, the individual mental health. There's a lot more anxiety. there's a lot more instability. There's a lot more psychiatric illnesses. And we're not really sure why that is. Some people just want to negate the whole thing and say, well, we only started really measuring it since World War II. So therefore, by definition, we're going to be able to track it. Other people say, one second, no, this is real. There's something about the marker of World War II, which has began some sort of like worldwide impact that we're just not as strong as we used to be. One thing's for sure. As much as mental health has become more and more of an issue over the past several decades, post World War II, but so has our ability to be able to respond and react accordingly. The therapy that we do today is not comparable to therapy about once upon a time. We have so many more tools in our toolbox. We have, whether it's things that are practical, we have practical skills. We're no longer going with just the Freudian subconscious stuff that was back in the day. We have medications that can help. We have centers that focus on various and specialize in various conditions and various difficulties and disorders. So we have come miles and miles ahead with where we stand in the treatment of anxiety and treatment of all types of mental health. Anxiety, for example, is something that once upon a time it was just laughed at and it was just pushed under the carpet. And today it has become it has earned itself a significant platform in the mental health world. Yes, it's real and people suffer with it. And yes, it requires treatment and it requires the sensitivity and the understanding of people around them, whether it's in the school arena, whether it's within families. Part of giving help is getting that sense of validation across that, yes, it exists. It's something real and something significant and something that we need to treat. And we have treatments that are highly effective for many, many disorders. So how do we understand this? How do we understand that with all that, one of the most important and crucial pieces of protecting us and keeping us strong has declined and is in decline, and that is our ability to have that sense of resilience. I think there's no question that if a person was given a whatever challenge that they're given today, back up 20, 30 years, 15 years, and have them go through that very same situation, the chances, the vulnerability that we have today, and the lack of tolerance and resilience that people are made up of will be clearly apparent. And today's world, you'll have those very same people needing a lot more intervention, possibly more medication, when a similar situation, similar set of circumstances back in the day would have perhaps rattled them and definitely caused distress, but the ability to rise up and continue was there. And let's just pick the most obvious example. Let's talk about World War II. You have people that went through the war, people that went through the Holocaust, they lost their entire families. Let's just imagine that. We can't even fathom it. They lost the things that they saw. And don't get me wrong. Oh boy, we're still suffering today from the trauma and from the significant impact that Holocaust had on the lives of our grandparents and great grandparents, and has and continues to have on us. But by the same token, you have people that went through the unspeakable, and yet, without any therapy at all, without any support system, they basically came over and built themselves new lives. Whether it's they got remarried, they rebuilt themselves families, they rebuilt their businesses. Some of them became extremely, highly successful and put their lives together. And it's not that in itself, the miracle behind that, and the amount of human strength and resilience that it was required in order for something like that to happen. And it didn't just happen with one family or one individual. It happened again and again and again. We can't even have a concept of something like that. In today's day and age, somebody goes through something, let's call it bullying or a psychiatric crisis. And I'm not minimizing that. Those are very, very highly significant circumstances. Yet you'll find, and maybe it's an abuse, yet you'll find that what happens as a result is leaves any individual in a extremely vulnerable, painful spot where their sense of self and their inner core is damaged in ways that they simply cannot pick up the pieces. So how does this make any sense? What happened here? What is wrong? On the one hand, we have all this mental health stuff, and we have all these centers, and we have all these great therapists, right? And at the same time, we're seeing a rise, an increase in people's lack of ability to handle distress and distress tolerance. We're seeing a lack of resilience. We see people getting knocked off from incidents of when once upon a time those incidents would have just, shaken them up, and then you get back on track. And today it's knocking people out altogether. What is going on? And the answer is, I think, a whole bunch of things. But what I do want to say is, this is something that we have to be very careful about. There has been, and I'm saying this now, even though this is going to be a hot button topic, people are going to feel, there are probably going to be emotions on both sides hopping up. But I want to say that we have to be super careful. We have to understand that with all our, with as far as we came in mental health and helping and validating and empathizing with people that have mental health struggles, but we can't forget there's a very big difference between giving them a sense of validation versus using it as an excuse. Anxiety doesn't have to be an excuse for I can't handle it. Just because we know, let's say, nope, that people don't get that kids shouldn't be. Nobody wants to put down kids. Kids' self-esteem is very, very delicate. And yes, we have to be careful how we deal with kids. But then what happens if somebody steps beyond their boundaries of what they're supposed to do, right? You have a teacher that didn't take the course, and you have a teacher that was in a bad mood that day, and the teacher says something nasty to that kid. So now what? Is that kid what we call a nebuch case? Is he a rachmanus because he had to endure that? Or do we say to him, listen, There wasn't an excuse for that. It's something that happened. And these things do happen. People say mean things. People say things that shouldn't be said. You were bullied. Yes. We need to figure out, we need to get it to stop. We need to teach you the skills of how to respond. But you know what? This is what people do sometimes, and it's not okay, but it's a reality. So what do we do now? Now we learn how to get through it, learn for the future, and that is what's going to make us stronger. You see, resilience isn't something that only protects, that just protects you from the past or from the present, but it actually makes you stronger for the future. So if you're looking to minimize the cases of anxiety that's coming through the doors, if we're looking to minimize, right, somebody's ability to cope with a disappointment or to cope with rejection and to build up self-esteem, then what we need to do is we need to put more of an emphasis in showing individuals how you have a human strength within you. And that strength is that we do not need to undo every wrong that was ever done to you. We do not need to avoid any circumstance that may put you in a tough spot, because that kind of rhetoric is going to turn our generation into marshmallows. It's going to turn us into a people that simply can't handle when the going gets rough. I'm not suggesting that we just say, suck it up and move on. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the notion that acknowledging and treating and validating is equal to giving a free pass, giving the victim an excuse, helping for the person to feel more victimized, that is the mistake that we make, right? Holding people accountable, whether it's kids or whether it's adults, for functioning and doing what they need to accomplish as individuals, despite their hardships, that's what's going to fortify, in my view, this generation, right? The reason why the people post-war were able to do what they did was for one reason, and that is because they had no choice. They had no choice but to pick up the pieces. Now, I understand that we're not talking about dire circumstances like that, but giving everybody a sense of sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes you need to pick up the pieces. Sometimes things are not always fair and easy. Not everything is fixable, but sometimes what we have to do is we have to learn to move on and let it go and work hard on the future. And you got bullied. There's no excuse for that. But let's learn some techniques of how to respond. Let's understand that you making yourself into a greater victim and becoming a bigger victim, that has become our culture. Our culture is that bullying there's a bully and there's a victim. And you as a victim are someone that we need to feel terribly sorry for. And we need to protect you. And the reality is that we're not going to be able to do that forever. So a person needs to learn how self-victimization is probably worse than the actual impact of the actual bullying. People have to become more strong within themselves. I don't have to fall apart because this happened. I don't have to become damaged goods just because I went through ... I'm more than that. I'm stronger than that. And yes, anxiety is something that I need that can be extremely debilitating. But at the same time, part of the treatment is facing it and working, whether that might mean gradual work, that may mean taking it apart and going and getting that mental health and support that allows me to do that. But the thought that because he's anxious or because she's anxious, she can't do that right now. There's places for that. There's a time for that. But let's not give a free pass. Anxiety, the whole concept of, I've had people that tell me, no, they can't do that because if they do it, if they face their anxiety, something might happen. No, nothing's going to happen. In fact, the clinical treatment for anxiety is getting individuals to face their fears. How cruel is that? It can be cruel. And I don't suggest, a good, solid clinician knows a way of building a hierarchy and creating resilience and tolerance and giving more tolerance as we progress. But the bottom line reality is facing things is what makes a person. Facing things is what allows the circumstances to have less of an impact and less of a say on who we are. We don't want our fate to be in the hands of our circumstances. That's a victim. That our fate, that we don't have control over our fate. No, that's got to change. We sometimes need to be held accountable for our responses, follow through despite how difficult it may be. Now, that's not to say, hey, you may need to get mental health help. You may need to be put on medication. You may need to modify your productivity for a while if it's being done strategically. All that is true. But one thing is also true, and that is that we cannot give people the sense that this is something that they cannot endure, or that that's not what validation is. That's not what empathy is. That this is something that's not endurable, and this is something that needs to be avoided at all costs, because that's not true. We live in a world that's a big, bad world, and there's going to be times where we're going to be exposed to mean people, mean circumstances, unfair situations. And if we fall apart from them because we were groomed or we were conditioned that, oh, if you went through that, then you need tremendous amount of repairing. So then the message that we're giving is those need to be avoided at all costs. I say the message we need to be given is, yeah, sometimes we go through those unavoidable situations and we can't necessarily look back. We need to look forward. We need to become stronger from it. We need to recognize this is part and parcel of what life is. And I think the only way to do this successfully is to have somebody that is sensitive to both parts. We can't be in denial. We need to understand that there are mental health crises, there are diagnoses, there are debilitating challenges, emotional challenges that people have. But at the same time, we need to balance that with building people up. They can do this. They need to do this. They need to be able to step up to the plate. And we have to spend more time giving them that support and that encouragement and that reassurance and showing them how they can stand up to those challenges. That, I think, is probably one of the most single adjustments that if we were to make as a community together, we will see an increase in the resilience that we need people to have. We will see people rising up to the challenge simply because they have no choice sometimes. And then we will see that the strides and the progress that we made in the mental health, which is something that we should all be very proud of, right? But that will actually equal the the success, the amount of, in other words, the amount of effort that we have been putting in helping people deal with the mental health challenges, I think will be so much more clear how impactful and how effective and how effective it has been if people can build up the resilience at the same time. So the next time you or your child is stuck with something, something came up, something they got into a little, maybe they got into a little spat with somebody on the bus, or maybe they wanted a certain nosh and it wasn't there. Whatever it is, whatever it may be. But the response doesn't have to be to every little thing. Oh, that must have been so hard. Well, what can we do to? No, because sometimes the message has to be, hey, listen, next time we're going to try to get it for you. But for now, we don't have it. So pick something else. Move on. We're not going to focus on the past again and again and again, because sometimes, again, it's a fine line, but doing that runs the risk that everything has to be, the past has to be rectified. That's not always true. I have people coming in here and all they want to do is live in the past. They want to relive the past so they can correct the experience. I'm not saying there's no place for that. But what I am saying is the only reason to repair the past is to be able to give the present, to be able to move on in the present. If you find that you're spending so much time on the past that you're not focusing on the future and it's not allowing you to focus on the future, something's wrong. Focus on the future. Does that mean sometimes we need to address what happened in the past? Sometimes. But the main goal here is to focus on the future, letting go, moving on. These may not sound like popular concepts. These may sound almost callous sometimes, or disregarding or dismissive. But you know what? I think a little bit more of this strategically in the great work that we're doing, but including more of that in the great work that we're doing will change things and improve things in ways that we wouldn't even imagine. So that's my take. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opinions on both sides. And hey, that's what we're here for, to be able to sainstorm together. Thank you so much for listening. And I look forward to hearing your ideas, comments, and we'll be talking more about this, I'm sure, in podcasts.